how I ultimately cleared my acne on my own. If you're new here, my name is Connor. I am a licensed esthetician in the state of Florida. I was not a licensed esthetician, nor was I a med spa director when I found the solution to my breakouts. This was, at this point, probably 6 or 7 years ago. So I'm 29 now. I was around about 21, 22 when I really got a hold over my acne. And I think that it is an interesting story for a couple of reasons. For context, my mother is an esthetician and was at the time. That being said, there are a lot of estheticians, my mother included, who have, for a number of reasons, decided that dermatologists and, I guess, more traditional medical providers when it comes to skin are not necessarily that useful, frankly. I do not share that perspective. I'm very much of the opinion that dermatologists play a pivotal role in the management of skin conditions, in the aesthetic treatment of skin. And the same can be true for certain plastic surgeons, certain non-dermatologist, non-surgeon physicians, or healthcare providers, so nurse practitioners, physician assistants. There's a really, a really long list of different types of professionals in the skincare space. And I think that all of them have, there's two camps really, right? There are dermatologists that they're just terrible, frankly. They will maybe give you the right prescription, but give you no tools for success. There are dermatologists that are fantastic, that will exhibit a level of skincare knowledge that, rivals that of many estheticians, and vice versa. There are estheticians that are absolutely useless. And then there are estheticians that like to, frankly, take notes from their dermatology counterparts. I think that there are a lot of different philosophies when it comes to skincare. There are a lot of different approaches to different skincare conditions, concerns, problems. There's a lot of redundancy in skincare. This is something that Veronica Bourgeois once said that I have always kept with me. There's a tremendous amount of redundancy in skincare. And what that means is there are a lot of different ways to get from point A to point B. And acne is no exception. There are a lot of different approaches to treating acne. Some of those involve exfoliants. Some of those involve retinoids. Some of those involve antimicrobial agents. Some of those involve diet changes. Some of those involve supplements. Some of them involve sunscreen, frankly. The exact solution, I think, for every single person's acne is probably going to vary a bit from person to person. I mean, ultimately, we're talking about the same condition, right? So there are commonalities across individuals with respect to the pathophysiology or the biological origin of acne. And I think that it's important to bear that in mind when thinking about how we're going to address it, because what sometimes happens is that the notion of skincare being a very personalized thing, a very individual experience, is sometimes taken too far, if I'm honest. And by that I mean that people will say, well, I know that retinoids are supposed to be the answer to skincare problems like acne, but I tried that and it didn't work for me. Okay, why didn't it work for you? Which retinoid were you using? How often were you using it? How long were you using it? What were the other pieces of your routine? What cleanser were you using? What moisturizer were you using? Were you even using a moisturizer? Were you cleansing daily? Were you using sunscreen? What kind of sunscreen? Was it mineral? Was it physical? Was it a hybrid? Were you using fragrance? Were you using very hot water when cleansing? Were you using very harsh cloths when removing cleansers? The list of questions is quite literally unending. All of this is a very long-winded way of saying that there are certain things that work. They work for a large number of people, and they have been, in certain cases, proven to work for certain conditions in large numbers of people. And one of those is Adapalene, often known as Differin gel. Adapalene is a synthetic retinoid that is used in the treatment of acne. The idea with Adapalene, or Differin, was that it would take the acne-fighting benefits or qualities of tretinoin or Retin-A, Atropine. Generally speaking, tretinoin has many different names that people know it by, but the idea with Adapalene was that we would take all of those benefits, when it comes to acne specifically, because tretinoin was originally innovated to treat acne, it was later discovered that tretinoin was beneficial for general aging concerns and, a host of other things. But adapalene was meant to build upon that understanding while helping to minimize some of the tolerability issues that we saw with tretinoin. Tretinoin is very difficult for a lot of people to tolerate consistently, and so it minimizes compliance, and if you are not compliant, you will not see the benefit of treatment. So the idea with adapalene was that it would be much easier to use. It would take the acne-fighting properties of something like tretinoin in a way that was much more, I guess, practically speaking, easy to use. And eventually, in the United States at least, adapalene was approved for over-the-counter use. And what does that mean? It means that you no longer require a prescription in order to get adapalene, at least not in the 0.1% concentration. There are forms of adapalene that reach 0.3% concentrations. Those are still prescription only, at least in the United States. However, the 0.1% concentration is now available over the counter, both in the form of different gel as well as generics. So La Roche-Posay has their own version, Walgreens has a generic, CVS has a generic, there's a brand called Acne Free. So adapalene is now very widely available in the United States. I have spoken about this previously in the episode, which I'll link in the description, of Filtered Content, the podcast that I have with my friend and colleague. And we were talking about how I was someone that struggled off and on with acne basically ever since I was a teenager. And then I, at some point in my early 20s, was stumbling across the different product page. If you're not familiar, in the United States at least, many brand name drugs will have dedicated web pages, and they'll have two versions of those web pages. They'll have one for providers and they'll have one for consumers. So the idea is that it basically acts as a reference point for the benefits of the medication, the relevant use cases. In the case of something aesthetic, like, adapalene, which is treating a skin concern, which can be seen, they'll typically have before and after pictures. But what's important to note here is that these are pictures that are coming from clinical trials. They're not pictures that some random person took in variable lighting from their bathroom, at varying intervals. These are images that were made consistent. The lighting was consistent because, again, they're part of these clinical trials. And so the webpage for Different had a number of before and after images on there. And I thought, these are fantastic results. They didn't seem so amazing that they felt unreal. They seemed very, very attainable, frankly, because throughout my years struggling with acne, I had achieved similar levels of clearance. It was never lasting clearance, but I knew that despite the fact that my skin could sometimes look a particular way, like in terms of the severity of breakouts, the distribution of breakouts, that there were moments in time where my skin could look like the skin of these individuals looked on the website. And so it felt very attainable, it felt very realistic. And in what was probably one of the most pivotal moments of my life, arguably, because this ultimately helped shape my ultimate career trajectory. It also helped to shape my beliefs and perspectives around science, education, medication. I read the insert on adapalene because I did ultimately purchase it because I saw these results and it was available over the counter. I didn't have to go to talk to a doctor. I could buy it. And so I bought it, and the insert said that it could take 3 to 6 months to see results. And I was disappointed at how long it would take. But on some level, I think that I was encouraged by what felt like a very realistic timeline, if that makes sense, right? Acne doesn't just improve overnight. And even if you have never really sought effective and evidence-based treatment, you know that just from personal experience. It doesn't just improve dramatically overnight or in response to one application of a given product. I think the one exception maybe would be like a really good clay mask, maybe. You will feel like your skin looks and feels a bit different after that. But, it's transient. Inevitably the pores will refill, the congestion returns, so on and so forth. And if you just continue using the mask, then you strip the skin, cause irritation. The irritation can itself contribute to newer worsening breakouts. And so you just kind of end up in a cycle, right? The point being that you recognize after having experienced acne for long enough that it does not resolve itself overnight. It is not something that will dramatically change in the course of a few days or, and sometimes even over the course of a couple weeks. You can feel like you're not really making any progress. Between reading the insert, reviewing the before and afters, And also just kind of, I think on some level, it's weird because I'm trying to I'm trying to analyze past me and like why I think I may have made the decision that I did, made the commitment that I did. So despite having an esthetician as a mother, despite having tried a number of different products that she would bring home, one of which actually was tretinoin, but I wasn't given the guidance necessary in order to make that successful. So I ultimately just ended up causing new problems for myself. And so quickly, as is the case for many people actually, toss that to the side. Now, fast forward a few years, and I'm now, looking at Adapalene. And I think importantly, at that point, I didn't have enough skincare knowledge really to understand that I was talking about or like looking at considering a product that was ultimately in the same category of medication as tretinoin, which I had tried, and as I just stated, was very unsuccessful with, again, largely because there was no guidance. But I, on some level, I guess just felt like, okay, I've done all of these things. I've tried all of these things. I've been at this for this long, for this number of years, whatever. I actually don't even really care. It's not a very expensive medication. I can use this every other night and we'll just see what happens. And lo and behold, the acne cleared up. The acne cleared up. And on some level, it's sad because it took as long as it did. Now that I have what I would consider clear skin, when I have breakouts, they are very minimal. They don't tend to last very long. And at this point, I have a degree of confidence in my ability to address them such that I don't get as anxious as I used to. Because before, like when you're younger, like you don't really feel like you have any control because you don't know why this is happening. You don't know what to do about it. You don't know, what the next steps are. So now being a professional, having been in the industry for years, having had years of experience treating this on my own, I now feel quite confident in my ability to manage my acne. And when things go wrong, I know why. When things aren't going the way that I want them to, I know what to do about it. And that was not the case before. What I think ultimately was the solution really was Adapalene. And it was actually only used every other day. I actually, after I had been on it for a while and achieved what I would consider pretty clear skin, I was like, maybe I'll increase to daily use. I did that and, I didn't really notice a meaningful improvement in clarity. I did notice, an increase in irritation and dryness, which was to be expected because I was increasing my frequency of use. So I backed off and I went back to every other day and I did that for years. I ultimately would introduce other kinds of retinoids on the off days because as I learned more about skincare, I learned about the benefits of retinoids, learned about the different kinds of retinoids, the different strengths, the different concentrations, the different formats, and I understood like all of these other benefits beyond clearing acne and keeping it clear. And so I wanted to incorporate retinoids, basically at every juncture. And so because I had the experience of trying to use Adapalene daily and found that a little bit too drying or a little bit too irritating, I was like, okay, well, let's maybe use like a weaker retinoid on the off nights just so we keep those receptors going, right? Like we keep that action going. And I ultimately would later add azelaic acid into what I consider my core skincare routine. And that was largely at the recommendation of Dr. Sam Bunting. I never consulted with her directly, but her YouTube channel was very impactful for me. The Acne Solved series, all of her content around azelaic acid was extremely interesting to me. So I think I tried The Ordinary's azelaic acid suspension, which good on them for having one available as long ago as they did, because nobody was talking about azelaic acid at that time. But once Dr. Sam Bunting came out with her Brightly serum, which was a 10% azelaic acid solution, I used that and used it consistently and noticed a significant improvement. I noticed an appreciable increase in the durability of my acne clearance. I didn't feel like my skin was, meaningfully sensitized by the azelaic acid, but I noticed that the breakouts that I did still experience on occasion while using Adapalene once every other day, those were largely eliminated. And then the more I learned about azelaic acid, the more I learned that this has benefits that extend far beyond pore clarity. And so at the end of the day, my current core routine, insofar as my acne management is concerned, I have Adapalene, 0.1% gel, still buying it over the counter, have never gotten a prescription for it, have never needed to go to the 0.3% concentration. That is used every other day on my face. On the off nights, I'm now using 0.05% tretinoin gel. from Obagi specifically. We retail this in the clinic that I work at. And I have introduced that primarily because in addition to the acne management qualities, tretinoin ultimately has the most research, the most evidence to support its use as a well-aging or anti-aging, however you want to frame that. From my experience, I have seen all of the same benefits that people will typically claim they get from tretinoin from Adapalene alone. And Adapalene is significantly easier to tolerate in my experience. So frankly, I have no intention of ever going off of Adapalene because it is so easy to tolerate. It is so easy to make a part of your routine. I love the gel format. Like the formula that you'll find Adapalene in is so easy to layer in your routine, and it's so effective, and it's so cheap, relatively speaking. I mean, if you have a really robust routine where you are cleansing effectively, you are moisturizing, you are sun protecting consistently, and you want to know what the best thing you could do for your skin without needing to go to a doctor is, Adapalene. 100% Adapalene. Use that every other day. You will transform your skin, for sure. But all of that to say that my journey was a complicated one. It wasn't what I think most people would expect if I tell them, oh, my mother was an esthetician, so by the time I started to see acne, I had a skincare specialist in my home. That didn't save me from acne. It didn't save me from the insecurity. It didn't save me from the reluctance to take photos. I remember physically hiding parts of my face. Like when I would like position myself, like talking to people, like I would hide my like chin sometimes because I knew that like there was like a spot, and people would call me out on it, and that's always great. But yeah, I mean, like it was a deeply impactful thing for me, especially being gay, and being bullied for being gay before you even knew what that meant and before you knew that you were gay, together with the fact that your skin doesn't look the way that you'd like it to, add on the fact that you are like this dissonance because like you have this person in your life that's giving you these products, that's telling you what to do, and you are under every impression that they're going to be the ones that are going to be able to fix this, like they know what they're talking about, and it's still not working, and then you feel like you have no control because you're doing what you're being told and it's still not fixing the problem. That was not fun as a teenager. And so again, like I talk about like this grief, right? Like a grief for time that I spent worrying about this that didn't need to be spent worrying about it. At the end of the day, I don't really have any regrets about it because it ultimately meant that I ended up where I am now, where I have an understanding of skin that, I mean, without trying to sound, really arrogant, I mean, far and away exceeds what the average person understands. I mean, I know more about skincare than most doctors, and that is something that has meant that I have been able to keep my skin under control, keep my skin clear, make my skin look better and better and better than I ever thought it could, and I can help other people do the same. And so this is a more personal video than I think I anticipated when I first hit record. But yeah, I love skincare. I love the fun of it. I love what it can do for people. I love how it can change your life. I mean, Dr. Sam Bunting says it all the time. Change your skin, change your life. Changing my skin completely changed my life. And I don't just mean because I was more confident. I mean because it has shaped where I live. It has shaped where I work. It has shaped what I do for, a living. It shaped how I spend my time at home. Like it shapes so much. Like skincare, when I say skincare is a lifestyle, I just mean it so much. I mean it so wholeheartedly. Skincare is a lifestyle. It doesn't have to be. In particular, if you're somebody that is lucky enough to not have any kind of chronic skin condition that you have to manage with skincare, but if you care about skin and you know enough about it, it is a lifestyle. In much the same way that health is a lifestyle. Like overall, like total body wellness, that's a lifestyle. It affects your activity, it affects what you eat, it affects what you don't eat, it affects what you drink, what you don't drink. Skincare is exactly the same because I would argue that skincare is healthcare, and just as you have, your dermatologists and your estheticians, you have your cardiologists and your personal trainers. I've made that that comparison before, but I think it really speaks to how there are different levels to this. There are things that I can do for you that other estheticians can do for you that are transformative. Does that mean that they replace what doctors can do for you? Absolutely not. Once you have the right tools, once you have the right information, and you can find a way to work that into your situation, contextualize it with your circumstance, I think that no matter what it is, whether it's skincare, whether it's exercise, all these, you can make so much of a difference. It is actually astounding. So that is what I've done to manage my acne. It has been the retinoids, the azelaic acid, and then the overall good skincare practices, right? So effective cleansing, moisturization, and sunscreen. But the active ingredients, the things that actually move the needle in terms of the condition, the acne, it's retinoids and azelaic acid, forever and always. I'll see you in the next one.